Hello everyone. In life, everyone makes mistakes, and that is unavoidable. However, when realizing one's own mistakes, the most important thing is to know how to fix and improve oneself. If we stubbornly refuse to change, or even try to hide those mistakes, the consequences will become even more serious. Early in the morning on March the 21st, 2000, Mr. Wang, the driver of the prosecutor's office in Huashan County, Anhui Province, after having breakfast as usual, happily went to work. When he went to the security room to get the car keys, he suddenly felt something was wrong because the door was still closed when it is normally opened very early in the morning. Mr. Wang called out loudly several times but heard no response. He approached the window to look inside and was horrified by a sight that he would have difficulty forgetting for the rest of his life. His colleague, a 55-year-old named Wen, was lying motionless on the bed with a trail of blood extending along the wall corresponding to the position of the victim's head and arms. Panicked, Mr. Wang immediately called the police. When they arrived, they found the security room in great disarray and signs of a search while the TV was still on. According to the forensic doctor, the victim had died of circulatory failure and traumatic brain injury. The injuries on the victim's head were round and concave, consistent with being attacked with a blunt object like a hammer. In addition, the victim was also pierced in the neck by a sharp object leading to severe bleeding, a trace consistent with a sharp knife. The traces left at the scene showed that the perpetrator had climbed through the sliding glass window of the security room to enter and commit the crime, and had also left through this same route after the incident. This case has caused a stir in public opinion and has had a significant impact on the security of the area. The local police have stepped in to quickly investigate and apprehend the suspects. They have conducted a crime scene examination and collected evidence in the hope of being able to determine the method and route the perpetrators used to break into the prosecution office. Currently, this area has become an educational center, with many old windows replaced and additional security systems installed. In the year 2000, this location did not have any public surveillance cameras, and even the area around the prosecution office building was very quiet, especially at night. Opposite the prosecution office is a vacant lot where locals can grow clean vegetables. The security room has a glass door leading outside, and on the ground, the police found 2 blood-stained footprints with a circular pattern belonging to a common sports shoe size around 41 and 42. This indicates that the victim was attacked by 2 people using a hammer and a knife, and the presence of 2 different footprints proves that there were at least 2 perpetrators. These footprints indicate that one perpetrator was tall and the other was shorter, with the taller one likely being over 1.76 meters tall and weighing more than 70 kilograms. At the security room window, the police also found a very fresh fingerprint on the dusty surface. And on the door handle, there was a clear, bloody fingerprint proving that the perpetrator had gripped it to close the door. Continuing the crime scene investigation, the police discovered that the drawers and document cabinets were all open, and some keys were still left in the locks. Additionally, on the 3rd and 4th floors, the police found many signs of ransacking. It appears that the perpetrators had ample time and left behind numerous traces at the crime scene, but the purpose of their actions remains unclear. While the police were continuing their investigation at the scene, an employee of the prosecutor's office ran in to report that a police car parked in the front yard of the building had gone missing. This car had previously been parked in the area marked by a red circle right next to the duty room. After receiving the report, the police immediately checked the front yard and discovered broken glass shards in the parking area, indicating that the car's windows had been smashed with a hammer. This further reinforced the hypothesis that the police car may have been taken by the perpetrator to flee the scene. In the course of the investigation, the Huashan District Police put forward 3 main scenarios about the motive behind the case. First, Mr. Wen may have had a conflict with someone and was murdered at his workplace for the purpose of revenge. Second, the perpetrator may have come to look for something, perhaps the case files, and after being discovered by Mr. Wen, they immediately killed him to erase the evidence. Third, the suspect may have come to steal property such as a car, but was then discovered and resorted to killing the victim. During the investigation, the police also interviewed the employees at the prosecutor's office to learn about the victim. Everyone said that Mr. Wen was a hardworking and dedicated person who was loved by all. They did not know if he had any conflicts with anyone, but Mr. Wen had been working there for more than 20 years and was highly regarded by everyone. From the statements of Mr. Wen's family, the police learned that he did not have any conflicts with anyone in the area where he lived. However, there was one minor incident that occurred before he went home by motorcycle. While he by motorcycle, a child ran out, causing both him and the child to fall. After the examination, the child only suffered minor scratches, but the child's family demanded that Mr. Wen pay a rather large compensation. Although Mr. Wen did not have a high income, he had to agree to pay a third of the amount they requested, and after that, the child's father had repeatedly cursed and threatened to kill Mr. Wen. On the day of the incident, the man who was in conflict with Mr. Wen was not present in the local area, as he had taken his mother to receive medical treatment in Beijing a week earlier, so he had a very convincing alibi. The police conducted a thorough investigation, taking statements from the surrounding neighbors and checking Mr. Wen's relationships. The results showed that he did not have any grudges against anyone and also had no debts, so the motive of revenge due to personal conflict was ruled out. The police are also considering the possibility that this was the action of criminals seeking vengeance for court rulings they were dissatisfied with. However, after reviewing recent cases, they found that all cases were handled thoroughly and there were no instances of wrongful convictions. Furthermore, the case files have not been tampered with or gone missing. Regarding the motive of robbery, the police discovered that in the security guard's room there was still over 3,000 yuan in Mr. Wen's recent salary that he had not yet had the chance to take home as he had been on night duty that day. Despite a thorough investigation, the police were unable to determine the motive or identify the perpetrators. After the investigation, the police realized that the culprits had thoroughly searched all floors of the building but did not take the money in the security guard's room, indicating that robbery was not their primary objective. Instead, stealing the police vehicle seemed to be for the purpose of escape rather than for theft, although using a police car would make them easily noticeable on the road. Based on the information gathered, the police have developed a new hypothesis. The criminals may have been targeting the armory in the prosecutor's office, as it is a highly secured and controlled space. Unfortunately, the exact location of the armory could not be determined. After discussions and identifying the initial motive of the suspects, the police concluded that these criminals are extremely bold and willing to kill during the break-in. The police have now cordoned off the area and determined the direction of the suspects' escape. Since they fled using the stolen police car, the most viable option is to locate the vehicle, which could lead to the resolution of the case. The police estimate that the vehicle could only go a maximum of about 50 kilometers because the vehicle only contained a small amount of fuel, so they expanded the search range to 60 kilometers to 70 kilometers and focused on the highway toll stations near National Highway 312. At one of the toll stations, an employee reported that they had seen a police car passing through around 5 a.m. and stopping to ask for directions, but because it was still dark, the employee could not clearly see the driver's face. After the employee pointed them in the direction, the police quickly drove about 10 kilometers before finding the abandoned vehicle, as the suspect had run out of gas and had to abandon the car and continue fleeing on foot. They knew how to remove and connect the electrical wires to start the car without a key, indicating they had knowledge of the vehicle's electronic system and the necessary tools. These skills and knowledge are only possessed by those who work in the auto repair industry or have studied automotive mechanics. Based on the location where the car was abandoned and the time it passed through the checkpoint at 5 a.m., the police determined the suspect could not have gone too far, so they divided into multiple groups and fanned out to search the surrounding area but did not obtain any useful results. The police then expanded the search by sending inquiries to local authorities, but still could not find any leads or suspicious suspects. At this point, the most valuable clue was the fingerprints collected from the crime scene, but since the technology at the time was not as advanced, the police had to manually compare them using traditional methods. They put in a lot of effort to search for and compare the fingerprints, but finding the suspect's whereabouts was extremely difficult, as China was just beginning to build a national fingerprint database system that was not as sophisticated as today's. The police had to use rather primitive equipment to compare each collected fingerprint against the samples of the suspect, a meticulous and time-consuming process. After numerous nationwide fingerprint analyses, the police still could not identify the perpetrator, but they still believed that with the development of technology, they would soon catch the criminal as long as they were still alive. 20 years have passed since the murder case occurred at the prosecutor's office, and by 2020, the fingerprint database had been further improved and many cases had been solved thanks to online comparison. The unsolved case of the murdered security guard from 20 years ago has also been added to the list of unresolved cases, and the fingerprints of the suspect have been entered into the wanted system. About 4 months later, the police received a report about a man in Jiangsu province whose fingerprints matched the case file. The Anhui police were extremely excited and manually compared the prints again, and the results confirmed that all the characteristic points of the fingerprints were exactly the same. The 42-year-old man named Wei Dongyu, who was living in Wujiang District, Jiangsu Province, has become the investigation target and the main suspect of the case that year. That very night, the Hoshan District Police immediately set out to Wujiang District, Jiangsu Province, to arrest the suspect. After arriving in Wujiang and further investigating the man named Wei Dongyu, the police confirmed that his occupation was a bus driver. The police made a plan to quickly and discreetly arrest Wei Dongyu, as they were concerned that his accomplices from that year might also be in Wujiang district. With the development of modern technology, any leak of information about the pursuit would make it very difficult to catch the remaining suspect if he fled. After discussion and research, the police planned to arrest Wei Dongyu. That early morning, they dressed in plain clothes and sat in his bus like regular passengers. 2 policemen sat in the middle of the bus, and 2 others sat at the front, near the door, ready to intervene if Wei Dongyu detected anything and tried to escape. They decided to wait until all the passengers had gotten off the bus before apprehending him to ensure the safety of everyone and keep the matter discreet. When only Wei Dongyu was left on the bus, one policeman pretended to have asthma and called the driver for help. When he stood up to go to the middle of the bus, the policeman immediately rushed in and arrested and restrained him. Wei Dongyu did not resist at all, but instead admitted his guilt. On the police bus, the police asked Wei Dongyu about what he had done in Huoshan district 20 years ago. He calmly replied that he had killed an old security guard and stolen a police car along with his friend named Zhang Shuigong. When faced with what he had done, Wei Dongyu broke down in tears, regretting his actions from that year. Wei Dongyu said he had never had a good night's sleep, and almost every night he had nightmares. In those dreams, he would often encounter an old man. Sometimes the old man would cry pitifully, but sometimes he would appear angry. Around 3 a.m. on August the 20th, 2020, with the assistance of the Jiangsu Provincial Police, the Huoshan District Police successfully arrested Zhang Shuigong while he was sleeping at his home. However, in contrast to Wei Dongyu, when questioned, this man did not admit to the crime. He even insisted that he had never been to Huoshan and knew nothing about the case. Although the police showed him Wei Dongyu's confession and the fact that they had arrested him based on information provided by his former accomplice, Zhang Shuigong, stubbornly refused to admit his guilt. Currently, the police do not have enough evidence to charge him, as the fingerprints at the scene only match Wei Dongyu, not Zhang Shuigong. After a few days of fruitless interrogation, the police decided to change tactics. They no longer asked the suspect about the murder case or whether he had been to Huoshan. Instead, they told Zhang Shuigong about the murder case that year, the tragic death of the 55-year-old victim, and the suffering of Mr. Wen's family. They also told him about the stories Wei Dongyu had revealed, as well as the nightmares in which he encountered the old security guard that had tormented him for over 20 years. After telling him all this, the police handed Zhang Shuigong a bottle of water and asked him, "Haven't you met that old man in your dreams for the past 20 years? How can you sleep well?" Faced with this question, Zhang Shuigong began to psychologically collapse, continuously bowing his head and shaking it. He began to cry and recount the story from that year when he and Wei Dongyu were still very young, only in their 20s. They wanted to earn a lot of money, but their abilities were limited, while their ambitions were very large. They wanted to start a business but had no capital and did not want to work as hired help, so they came up with a crazy idea to rob a bank to have startup capital. However, the problem was that they could not directly rob a bank, and they needed guns to increase their chances of success, but they did not know where to get guns. At that time, Wei Dongyu remembered that there were guns pictured in a newspaper article about the Huo Mountain Procuratorate in Anhui Province, and this area was quite deserted at night, so they set out to go there. On the night of March 21st, 2000, Wei Dongyu and Zhang Shuigong climbed into the building through a first-floor window carrying hammers and knives. When they were prying open the locks, they heard a noise from a small room and discovered a security guard sleeping. So they decided to knock the security guard unconscious to steal but not to kill him. However, Wei Dongyu used a knife while he used a hammer to attack the security guard, and unfortunately the guard died on the spot. After that, they went to the other floors to look for guns, but they had ransacked almost all the rooms without finding what they needed. Zhang Shuigong was more careful. He had prepared cloth gloves, while Wei Dongyu left fingerprints at the scene. At this point, dawn was beginning to break, making them impatient and wanting to leave. They went downstairs and found a police car, then used a hammer to break the car window. Because Wei Dongyu had previously worked as a mechanic, he knew how to bypass the ignition to start the car without a key. They drove for a while, but since they were not familiar with the terrain, they stopped at a toll booth to ask for directions. However, they had run out of gas and had no more money to refill, so they had to leave their car in Huoshan County and walk back home. On the way, they were tired and afraid, but they did not dare to take the main road for a fear of being chased by the police. Fortunately, after walking for a while, they encountered a truck driver who gave them a ride all the way back to their hometown in Jiangsu. After 20 years, they both have wives and children, but they have never been able to live comfortably, always feeling afraid whenever they see the police. They often have nightmares about being arrested by the police for their crimes, which keeps them in a constant state of anxiety and fear. Wei Dongyu even said that when the police came to arrest him on the bus, it was very similar to the scene in his recurring dream, and he even felt relieved and calm, no longer having to hide and live in fear. In the trial in February 2021, Zhang Xuegong's testimony was that he only wanted to knock the victim unconscious but accidentally caused their death and that he did not intend to kill. However, according to the forensic report, the victim was attacked with extreme brutality, a fatal stab wound to the neck, with a sharp knife and a fractured skull from being beaten with a hammer. These injuries clearly showed that they intended to take the victim's life. The two murderers were young men in their 20s who had planned to rob a bank by stealing guns, but the process led to a tragic outcome. Afraid of being discovered, they ruthlessly murdered the innocent victim. Although they managed to evade capture for 20 years, the two murderers had to live in constant haunting and anxiety every day. They committed a terrible crime just to conceal a lesser one. This was a horrific mistake that cost an innocent life. It is a painful lesson about the terrible consequences of mistakes, as well as the savagery and cruelty that humans can commit when driven by fear and ambition. What are your thoughts on the case that happened today? Please comment below so we can discuss together, and if you find it interesting, don't hesitate to leave a like and subscribe to our channel to support us. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.